Silence is not emptiness. That's not the absence of words. It is a mirror, one so clear it forces the other person to see themselves in it. When you go silent, you hand someone a stage with no script, no cues, no guidance. And in that empty space, their mind will fill in the gaps, sometimes with desire, sometimes with fear, but always with something they cannot ignore. Understand this: people are addicted to predictability. They crave knowing how the next chapter unfolds, especially in relationships. But when you remove your voice, your presence, your energy, even for a short while, you interrupt the pattern. And the human brain, wired for patterns, starts working overtime to solve the puzzle. She will replay your last conversation. She will search for hidden meanings in your expressions, your last words, your tone. Every little detail becomes magnified. Why? Because uncertainty creates emotional tension. And emotional tension is the spark that fuels curiosity, and curiosity is the seed of attraction. Silence also carries another weapon: it forces respect. Not the kind that's begged for, but the kind that is earned through self-possession. It says, without saying, I am not here to entertain you at the cost of my own worth. It shows you are a person who values your energy, your peace, and your focus more than the constant need to be understood or validated. So the next time you feel the urge to explain yourself endlessly, stop. Let the silence do the heavy lifting. Give the other person the gift and the burden of sitting with their own thoughts about you. Because silence used with intention doesn't push people away. It pulls the right ones closer. And when you master it, you don't chase connections, connections chase you. Silence can be one of the most intoxicating forces in a relationship, especially when it's used with intention. Imagine a moment where words are expected, a text that should have been answered instantly, a comment you could easily respond to, a call you could pick up without hesitation, but instead you choose stillness, not coldness, not rejection, stillness. That pause becomes a pulse. That absence becomes a presence in itself. Because here's the truth: in intimacy, the mind is the most dangerous player. When you step back and allow a moment to breathe, you give the other person's imagination the permission and the pressure to run wild. They start thinking, why hasn't he replied? What is he doing? Who is he with? Is he thinking of me? Did I do something? And in that storm of thoughts, desire begins to curl around uncertainty. We are creatures of habit, trained to fill silence with noise. Most people rush to respond, to clarify, to explain, to assure. But when you resist that pull, you create something rare: space. Space where curiosity blooms. Space where longing grows. Space where the absence of your voice becomes louder than anything you could have said. Think about it. When was the last time you truly craved someone? It wasn't when they were constantly available, flooding you with attention. It was when they left you wondering. It was in those moments when you lay awake, replaying a single interaction, searching for hidden meaning in a glance, a half smile, the way they said your name. That's what silence does. It turns small details into obsessions. And here's the psychological hook: the human brain hates unfinished stories. When you go silent, you turn the relationship into an unsolved mystery. Your absence becomes a cliffhanger, and every second they don't hear from you is another page they're desperate to turn. They don't realize it, but their body responds. Heart rate quickens, thoughts loop, attention sharpens. This isn't just emotional, it's chemical. The same dopamine pathways that light up during attraction are ignited by uncertainty. You're not pushing them away, you're pulling them in, without even touching them. In intimacy, this effect becomes even more potent. Silence is not simply the lack of conversation. It's a pause that amplifies every previous interaction. That moment when you didn't reply, it makes them think about your last touch. That day you didn't call, it makes them remember the sound of your voice, the way it lingered in the air after you hung up. It's as if every absence magnifies the memory of your presence. And there's another layer: power. Not power in a manipulative sense, but in self-possession. Choosing silence shows you are not governed by impulse. You are not desperate to fill the air just to avoid discomfort. You are comfortable letting things unfold. You're teaching them, without saying a word, that you are someone who moves with intention, not someone who scrambles for attention. That energy is magnetic because it communicates something primal. I am enough, with or without your constant engagement. Silence also has a way of bringing truth to the surface. When you don't rush to speak, the other person is left with themselves, their thoughts, their feelings, their insecurities, their desires. Some will feel unsettled by it, others will find it irresistible. Either way, you're not just creating distance, you're creating a stage where they project their deepest emotions onto you. And once that happens, once they've started weaving you into their inner dialogue, you're no longer just someone they talk to, you've become someone they think about when you're not there. It's not the absence of communication that makes this powerful, it's the precision of it. The choice to pull back at the moment when giving in would have been easy. The decision to let silence speak louder than your voice ever could. The moment where you let them feel the weight of not having you immediately so they can appreciate the impact of having you later. Mystery has always been one of the most powerful triggers of desire. It is the unspoken, the unseen, the unanswered that draws people closer. When you hold back just enough, when you allow certain parts of yourself to remain veiled, you awaken a primal curiosity in the other person. They begin to wonder what else there is to you, what you're like when no one is watching, what your thoughts sound like when you're alone, what secrets your eyes hold that your lips refuse to confess. This is the fuel that keeps intimacy alive, the quiet fire that burns beneath the surface. Because the truth is, people are drawn not to what they fully understand, but to what they almost understand. When everything about you is laid bare too soon, there is nothing left for the other person to discover. Desire thrives on the unknown. The mind wants to explore, to peel back layers, to earn access to the private corners of your soul. When you keep certain parts of yourself just out of reach, you give them a reason to keep coming closer. Think about the last time you were truly intrigued by someone. It wasn't because they told you everything from the start. It was because there was something about them that you couldn't quite pin down. Maybe it was the way their smile never gave away the whole story, or the way they paused before answering, as if guarding a thought too intimate to share right away. That's the pull of mystery. It seduces the imagination into working overtime. And in relationships, imagination is a powerful aphrodisiac. When they can't read you completely, they begin to fill in the blanks with their own fantasies. They picture you in scenarios they've never seen. They imagine your reactions to moments you've never shared. You become bigger than the reality. You become an idea, an image, a feeling that lives inside them. And that is far more intoxicating than anything you could simply hand over in plain words. The psychology behind this is simple. The human brain craves novelty. We're wired to seek out what's new, what's different, what's unpredictable. When you remain a little unpredictable, when you resist being fully known all at once, you become a source of novelty in their life. Each interaction with you feels like unwrapping a gift they can't wait to open, but never fully finish. This keeps the connection alive, keeps them leaning in, keeps them wondering what else there is to find. In intimacy, mystery doesn't mean withholding affection. It means allowing your depth to reveal itself slowly, like a slow burn rather than a sudden flame. You don't have to be distant, but you do have to be deliberate. You let them see pieces of you that ignite desire, while keeping enough hidden to make them crave more. That look you give across the room, the slight pause before your hand finds theirs, the way you lower your voice when saying something only they can hear. These are the moments that stay etched in their mind long after they're gone. And here's where it becomes magnetic. When you're not an open book, they can't predict you. And when they can't predict you, they can't control the way they feel about you. Every meeting feels like a discovery. Every conversation feels like a step deeper into something they can't name yet, but don't want to stop exploring. This is how you become unforgettable. Not by giving them everything, but by giving them just enough to make them hungry for what's next. Control in intimacy is not about dominance in the physical sense. It's about the mastery of your own impulses, the discipline to guide the rhythm of the connection instead of being swept away by it. There is something deeply erotic about restraint, about knowing you could give in instantly but choosing not to. It creates a tension that hums between two people, a quiet but undeniable awareness that you are not acting out of desperation, but from deliberate intention. The most magnetic individuals in relationships are not those who give everything all at once, but those who move with precision, as if every gesture, every word, every pause is intentional. That kind of presence says, I am here because I choose to be, not because I need to be. And that choice becomes intoxicating. It transforms the dynamic. Instead of the other person taking your attention for granted, they start to value it because they can sense it isn't something you hand out carelessly. Think about it. Attraction loses its power when it feels too easy, too predictable. But when you hold back, when you let the moment stretch just a little longer before touching, when you wait before answering a question that's too revealing, when you don't rush to say yes to every invitation, you change the energy. You signal that your time, your touch, and your attention have weight. And when something has weight, it demands respect. This is where the psychological hook comes in. People are wired to want what they can't immediately have. When you show control, you create a subtle scarcity. Your affection becomes rare. Your attention becomes something they have to earn, not something automatically given. And in the scarcity of it, its value rises. They start noticing the small things, the way your eyes linger for just a second longer, the rare smile that breaks through at the right moment, the subtle shift in your voice when the conversation turns intimate. Control also heightens sensation. When you withhold the immediate gratification of a touch or a kiss, you make the anticipation sharper. The human brain experiences anticipation as a form of pleasure in itself. That's why people remember moments of almost as vividly as moments of actual, that pause before giving in, that restraint before surrendering. It leaves an imprint that lasts long after the moment passes. And in relationships, control is a sign of self-possession. It tells the other person you are not reacting purely to their moves. You are setting the pace. You're not chasing, you're leading without force. This doesn't just make you attractive, it makes you a source of stability. In a world where so many people act out of impulse, someone who can master themselves stands out like a lighthouse in the dark. There is a certain thrill in being with someone who isn't easily swayed by the rush of the moment. It's not coldness, it's composure. It's the ability to remain grounded while still creating heat. The other person feels it in the way you hold their gaze without speaking, the way you walk away when the moment calls for it, the way you let them come to you instead of always moving toward them. This balance between closeness and distance becomes addictive. In intimacy, control doesn't diminish passion, it refines it, it shapes it into something deliberate, something that builds instead of burns out. It ensures that when you finally do give in, it's not out of habit, boredom, or weakness, but out of a conscious decision that magnifies the connection. Space in a relationship is not the absence of care, it's the oxygen that keeps the fire alive. When you step back, when you're not immediately present in every moment, something subtle but powerful begins to happen inside the other person. They feel the shift, they notice the quiet, and that quiet becomes a canvas where longing paints its most vivid strokes. Human desire thrives on absence. When you are always there, always available, always within reach, your presence blends into the background. It becomes familiar, and familiarity, while comforting, can dull the sharp edges of attraction. But when you create space, when you let them go hours without hearing from you, days without your touch, you awaken a new kind of attention. They start looking for signs of you in their day, a song you once played, a scent that reminds them of your skin, a phrase that echoes something you once said. Suddenly you're not there physically, but you are everywhere mentally. And here's the hook: space makes the heart work harder. The mind begins to rewind, replay, and romanticize every moment you've shared. They remember the warmth of your laugh, the way your eyes searched theirs, the feeling of your hand at the small of their back. The brain doesn't just recall these moments, it exaggerates them, making them bigger, more intense, more intoxicating than they were in real time. In your absence, you become a myth, they tell themselves over and over again. Space also triggers a subtle fear of loss. It whispers, what if this connection isn't permanent? That fear, far from pushing them away, often pulls them closer. It makes them want to secure you, to seek you out, to close the gap you've created. They may not even realize they're doing it, but every message they send, every plan they make, is an attempt to bring you back into their orbit. In intimacy, space can feel like a slow burn that heightens desire. When you don't immediately answer that late-night text, they imagine what you might be doing. When you don't instantly agree to meet, they wonder who else has your attention. This isn't about playing games. It's about understanding that desire needs room to breathe. Just like a flame grows higher when air flows freely, attraction deepens when there is space for it to expand. It's in that space that they begin to miss, not just your presence, but the way you make them feel about themselves. Maybe you bring out a confidence they don't feel with anyone else. Maybe you make them laugh in a way that feels rare. Maybe you look at them as if they're the only person in the world. Without you there, they feel the absence of that version of themselves, and that absence pulls them toward you even more. The psychology here is undeniable. Scarcity amplifies value. When your time and attention are not endlessly available, they become precious. Each meeting becomes more meaningful. Each word you share feels heavier. They start to understand, even if unconsciously, that your presence is not guaranteed, that it must be cherished, not assumed. Space also allows your own energy to recharge. When you step back, you're not just giving them room to miss you, you're returning to yourself, grounding your own emotions, and ensuring that when you do return, you bring depth, strength, and presence with you. And that presence, after a period of absence, hits differently. It's not just welcomed, it's craved. Confidence speaks before you ever open your mouth. It's in the way you carry yourself, the way you occupy space, the way you hold your own energy without constantly seeking reassurance. In relationships and intimacy, confidence is its own silent language, one that communicates far louder than words ever could. It tells the other person that you are whole on your own, that your worth isn't hanging on their approval, and that being in your presence is a privilege, not an inevitability. There is something deeply attractive about someone who doesn't beg for attention, who doesn't crumble under silence, who doesn't overcompensate when things feel uncertain. This kind of self-assurance isn't arrogance, it's a quiet strength, a sense that you could walk away at any time and still know exactly who you are. That knowledge, that certainty, changes the entire dynamic. It shifts you from being someone who is chasing validation to someone who is chosen because of the value you project without saying a word. Think about the most magnetic moments you've ever experienced with someone. It's rarely when they were explaining how great they are. It's in the stillness, in the eye contact that doesn't break, in the unhurried way they move, in the calmness they maintain even when emotions run high. Confidence radiates in subtle gestures, the way you smile without needing a response, the way you answer slowly instead of rushing to fill every silence, the way you let the conversation breathe because you're not afraid of a pause. Here's the hook. Confidence in intimacy is the antidote to neediness. When you hold yourself with poise, you send a signal that your life is full, your world is rich, and your happiness is not dependent on someone else's constant attention. This doesn't push people away, it draws them in. Because deep down, people are attracted to stability. They want to be around someone whose emotions are not tossed around by every passing mood or text message. In intimate moments, confidence changes the texture of desire. It turns every touch into a choice rather than a plea. When you touch someone from a place of self-assurance, it feels different. It's steady, grounded, and unhurried. It's not about taking from them, it's about meeting them as an equal. That energy is rare, and rare things are irresistible. Confidence also makes your boundaries magnetic. You don't have to announce them or defend them constantly. They are felt in the way you operate. You're not available at all hours, not because you're playing a game, but because your time is valuable. You're not afraid to walk away from situations that drain you, not because you're cold, but because you respect yourself enough to protect your energy. This communicates a powerful message. You are someone who is with them because you want to be, not because you have to be. And in relationships, this self-contained energy turns you into an anchor. You're not swayed by their moods, you're not reactive to every little shift, and you're not dependent on constant reassurance. That steadiness becomes addictive, especially in a world where most people are moved by insecurity. Your calm presence makes them feel safe, yet your self-sufficiency keeps them on their toes. They know you can stand alone, and that makes them want to stand with you even more. Confidence is also deeply tied to desire because it changes the way you're perceived. Someone who is confident is automatically seen as more attractive, more capable, more in control of their life. And in intimacy, that perception magnifies the connection. Every glance, every word, every move feels more intentional when it comes from someone who knows exactly what they bring to the table. Anticipation is the most underestimated form of foreplay. It begins long before a single touch, long before lips meet, long before the first word is even spoken in a moment of intimacy. It's a slow, deliberate build that turns the mind into the most powerful erogenous zone. When you learn to create anticipation, you turn every interaction into a spark that waits for the perfect moment to ignite into flame. Desire doesn't always live in what's happening right now, it lives in what could happen. When you give someone a glimpse, but not the whole picture, you awaken a hunger that keeps them thinking about you even when you're not there. A glance that lingers for half a second too long, a touch that grazes without fully landing, a whisper that stops just before revealing everything, these are the moments that live rent-free in their mind. Here's the hook. People remember the almost more vividly than the actual. The brain is wired to replay unfinished moments over and over, searching for a conclusion. That's why the pause before a kiss can be more electric than the kiss itself, why the seconds before you close the distance can feel like eternity in the best possible way. Anticipation sharpens every sensation. It makes time slow down and emotions heighten. In relationships, anticipation isn't just about sexual intimacy, it's about emotional buildup too. It's in the way you create excitement before meeting, the way you let them think about your last conversation, the way you drop a subtle hint and let their imagination run wild. The more you allow their mind to wander, the more invested they become in the idea of you. And once the mind is hooked, the body follows naturally. Anticipation also feeds on unpredictability. If someone always knows what you'll do next, there's no room for curiosity to grow. But when you change the rhythm, when you sometimes give and sometimes hold back, when you keep certain moves and words in reserve, you make every interaction feel fresh. This unpredictability keeps the connection alive because they never feel like they've figured you out completely. In intimacy, anticipation can be built in the smallest ways. The slow slide of your hand before holding theirs. The moment you lean in close enough for them to feel your breath but not your lips. The way your eyes travel over them with intent, without rushing. These aren't just actions, they're signals, hints of what's to come, moments that pull them to the edge of wanting without letting them fall into it too soon. The psychological effect is undeniable. When someone is kept in suspense, their brain floods with dopamine, the same chemical associated with pleasure and reward. This means that even before you've done anything physical, their body is already responding to you. They're not just thinking about you, they're feeling you in the way their heart races, the way their skin tingles, the way their breath changes without warning. Anticipation also has a way of deepening intimacy over time. When you don't rush to give everything at once, each step forward feels earned. Each new experience feels layered on top of the last, building a shared history of moments that were worth waiting for. And the more something is worth waiting for, the more it's cherished when it finally arrives. It's in those moments where you're almost close enough to touch, but not quite, where your voice drops lower and the rest of the world disappears, where every second feels heavy with possibility. Those moments don't just create attraction, they create obsession because anticipation doesn't fade quickly. It lingers, looping in the mind, replaying over and over until it demands release.